So, welcome to IMCC. It's Tuesday Night Live. I'm your host, Jeanne Van Gemert. So, let's just sit for a moment, just feel ourselves here. Let's take some deep breaths. You can look around at all of us here virtually. Being grateful that we're here. And I'd like to talk about tonight how we are in a terribly difficult time. Our emotions are taking a beating. We feel crazed, exhausted with all the information, unbelievably sad, angry, anxious. There's some despair and there's some hope. Our practice teaches that it's best to turn toward it and to have the confidence that we can work with it. After all, we have a well-worn path of stepping stones to guide us. I'll use a different kind of format tonight, thinking of the time as divided into sections. In the first one, I'll guide you down into your body, into some relaxation. Then we'll get a jump start with some concentration to give you time to work a bit with your own practice. After that, I'll guide you through an experience of investigating or inquiry and give you some time alone with that. We'll come up to the surface for a stretch break, drop down again with a poem, take time for that, come back and take a real break. Then in the last section, there'll be a short time, a short talk, and time for questions at the end. So, a busy evening in store. And let's start by preparing ourselves for our own practice. So starting to drop into ourselves, we may want to wiggle a bit. It's like move the shoulders a bit, move the neck around. Stretch your arms out. Take a couple of deep breaths. And then contact the breath in your body. Taking some extra deep breaths so that you can feel your shoulders rise and fall with these breaths. It's like when the breath almost becomes a yawn. You may want to wiggle a little bit more. And it's almost like taking an elevator down with the out breath. Right down into your torso, down your arms, right down to where you're sitting. Spending some time with your attention to all the surfaces that are touching. Yourself sitting on the chair, the sofa, or the bed, or the cushion. Whatever surfaces your hands are touching. Your feet are touching. Beginning to feel as if your breath is traveling through your entire body. From your head down to your feet. Through the vertical of ourselves. And then enlarge that so it's like we're traveling right up to the sky, to all those clouds, the stars behind them. And then down through your feet into the earth. And from this large vantage point, maybe expanding the space out in front of you. Expanding out in back of you. Expanding out your right side. And out your left side. So you're kind of resting in the center of yourself. Being aware of this inhale and exhale that fuels us, that graces us, that we're so grateful for. Letting yourself have it, almost like we're drinking the breath, this breath of life. And as we move into our own practice, you may want to choose a spot in the body as an anchor. It's easiest when the part is moving. Easiest to keep your attention there, like the movement of the ribs. The air coming in and out of the nostrils. The movement of the abdomen. Or just letting yourself scan. Being aware at different times. So say your toes. Move the slight movement of your shoulders. The rise and fall. And to build up some concentration, you may want to take that place that you've decided to focus with and pay extra attention to it. You might want to add some counting. You can count on the in-breath, just count to 10 and then start over. Or you can count at the end of each exhale. So you're synchronizing the breath with the counting. Or just the in-breath with the count. Or the out-breath with the count. Or the movement through the body with a count. And kind of relax a bit into that rhythm as you're increasing your concentration. And if you're counting, we'll count up to 10 3 times. In your own time, at your own pace, in your own rhythm. And then, and then moving into your own practice for about 10 minutes, either continuing what you've been doing, or loving kindness, or any practice that you choose, choiceless awareness. Or certainly working with something that has come up for you. And by working with it, I just mean hanging out with it. Take a minute or so to wrap up your own practice, but stay slightly meditative while I explain the next part. In this next section, we're going to drop down further from wherever we are, from thrashing around in the chop on the surface of the ocean or below that, and drop down more deeply into the peace and stillness at the bottom of the ocean of ourselves, which can restore, refresh, and renew us. To get there, we can use our courage to drop down through the difficulties of ourselves, our sorrows, our fears, and strengthen our heart minds so we can resurface again to the light with more clarity and compassion. So please straighten your shoulders a bit. Take 3 deep breaths. And notice how your posture with your shoulders slightly back and deeper breaths prepares you for the journey. Close your eyes, slightly move your spine. This is a bit like preparing to go to sleep. You have to kiss your ego goodnight and leave it at the door. Now, this ego of ours has a lot of benefits. You have to give it its due, but it's not needed for this journey. And besides that, the ego hates the shadows. It might lose control. The territory as we go deeper gets more subtle. As we go deeper into ourselves, the ego doesn't like subtle. The ego part of ourself wants to be out there. But don't think for a minute that your ego is going to stay where you put it. It's always ready to sneak back into the scene to, quote, protect you. We have very tricky minds. The good news about working with difficult emotions is that you don't have to figure it out. It will unwind if you're willing to contemplate or hang out with it. Please choose a difficult emotion to work with. At the beginning, I mentioned feeling beat up, crazed, exhausted, sad, angry, anxious, some despair, or choose another. Using the acronym RAIN, R for recognize, we did that. A for acknowledging, we did that. I for investigate or inquiry. The I is also for intimate. We want to really get close to this. So imagine this difficult feeling is on a large outdoor bench facing another large outdoor bench. And you want to sit a safe distance, about 6 feet from it. Now tune into your own body and locate where this difficult feeling is in your own body. You want to witness with self-compassion that you have this. You might give yourself some loving kindness. It's hard that I have this anxiety in the pit of my stomach. I do really wish it were 60 feet away from me. Then go back and feel it again inside yourself. Toggle a bit back and forth with it being within you and then out there. So you don't have to really do anything more than that. You don't have to have any insights or solve anything. Just keep hanging out with it, asking what's underneath it. Probably other difficult feelings like sadness. And maybe underneath that, anger or grief or whatever. And you'll notice as we're sitting, you're just witnessing the release of its energy. And the next time this difficult emotion surfaces, it will have less juice. Like those last lines in the Wendell Berry poem, then what I am afraid of comes. I live for a while in its sight. What I fear in it leaves it, and the fear of it leaves me. Then relax. You've shown yourself courage, you faced it. The last letter, N in rain, is about not identifying with it. That's like seeing the emptiness that's left as the energy of the issue deflates, even a bit. Whenever we hear the word emptiness or loss, our fear rises. The etymology of the word fear is fair, meaning toll. We have to pay a toll, a price, to see the truth. The truth is that as long as we have an issue of something out there that we can say to ourselves is real, then we can say to ourselves, well, that means I'm real. And if we can chomp on a big reaction, if we have a big reaction, it strengthens our ego. It's real. Therefore, I'm really real. As long as I'm angry, that means I'm really strong. I have an opinion. So you can see how this is me, I. I'm somebody. But if we can keep sitting with the emptiness, that idea you're not somebody in capital letters, you're not nobody, you're you. you begin to see the fertility in the word empty. Nothing is really empty as we use the word. It's really full and interconnected and changing and fluid all the time. Then remember about loving kindness and give compassion to yourself. You're just you. Oh yeah, all these difficult emotions seem to be part of being human. When you've experienced this, you can see it as a portal, a letting go, setting down the luggage of it so you can travel more lightly. You don't need a strong reaction to feel strong and solid. Everything is really quite fluid, and that's okay. And as we come back up to the surface, we can notice we're more open-hearted. We don't have such a big dog or a big ego in the fight. It might feel strange, but that's okay. Smile that you've made it through and pet this new, smaller, but more skillful dog. Letting go of a bit of ego is a bit enlightening. It lightens the luggage. We can also remember the Buddha named 3 characteristics or 3 marks of existence: impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and no self, anatta. They all work together and separately. We do suffer more if we don't see the truth of impermanence or think we have a solid, never-changing self. We aren't a fixed self. Nothing is fixed. All we really have is the moment we inhale and this moment we exhale. So let's take just a brief stretch break, and then we'll dive down again with the poem. And just wiggle and stretch a bit. It's hard work we're doing tonight. This poem by Mary Oliver is about sorrow, a difficult emotion for sure. So pull your shoulders back a tiny bit to remember your courage. Take 3 deep breaths and go right down, back down inside yourself, requesting a bit more clarity, truth, understanding of sorrow. Notice it's easier to drop down again and just listen. I'll read it twice and then give you time to hang out with it. Stay with all or any part of it. Love sorrow. She is yours now, and you must take care of what has been given. Brush her hair, help her into her little coat. Hold her hand, especially when crossing a street. 4, think, what if you should lose her? Then you would be sorrow yourself. Her drawn face, her sleeplessness would be yours. Take care, touch her forehead, that she feel herself not so utterly alone. And smile, that she does not altogether forget the world before the lesson. Have patience in abundance, and do not ever lie or ever leave her even for a moment by herself, which is to say, possibly, again, abandoned. She is strange, mute, difficult, sometimes unmanageable, but remember, she is a child, and amazing things can happen. And you may see as the two of you go walking together in the morning light, how little by little she relaxes. She looks about her. She begins to grow. Love, sorrow. She is yours now, and you must take care of what has been given. Brush her hair. Help her into her little coat. Hold her hand, especially when crossing a street. For think, what if you should lose her? Then you would be sorrow yourself. Her drawn face, her sleeplessness would be yours. Take care. Touch her forehead that she feel herself not so utterly alone. And smile that she does not altogether forget the world before the lesson. Have patience in abundance, and do not ever lie or ever leave her even for a moment by herself, which is to say, possibly, again abandoned. She is strange, mute, difficult, sometimes unmanageable, but remember, she is a child, and amazing things can happen. And you may see as the two of you walking together in the morning light, how little by little she relaxes. She looks about her. She begins to grow. So let's sit with that for about 5 minutes. Or any part of it. Sitting now on that bench real close to sorrow. Within you and out of you. And slowly and in your own time, opening your eyes, stretching, coming back into the room. At the beginning, when I mentioned that we had a well-worn path of stepping stones, that's called the Eightfold Path. We can turn to it with total confidence that it works. Just like when you put a pot of water on the fire, you know it'll boil. If you're not totally familiar with the Eightfold Path, you can look it up on the website, accesstoinsight.org. This path is very empowering. It's what we can do. We can have right or wise view, wise intention, wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, wise effort, wise mindfulness, and wise concentration. We can use the strength of our practice to access, through difficult emotions, the beliefs that really run the show, to get underneath them and dislodge them to see the truth. It reminds me of the delight of a small child fishing, who catches a fish, pulls the dark mass out of the water, and the child screaming and jumping for joy at the extreme beauty, energy, and brightness of the fish before it's released again. I try to remember too that the sun is always shining. It's really the earth that turns, and that there's always light and shadow. To answer the question from the title of tonight's talk, what happens next, is that we don't know. Everything is always in flux, but impermanence doesn't mean the ending, it means change. One of the best things I've read lately is the end of this essay by the Indian author Arundhati Roy. She writes, "Whatever it is, coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past, and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists. And in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hate, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and fight for it. Let me read that again, it's so good. Whatever it is, again, this is Arundhati Roy. Whatever it is, coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past, and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists. And in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world, and ready to fight for it. Let's sit for just a moment. May I and all beings be happy. May I and all beings be healthy. Have the ease of well-being. Have peace and be safe. And then may the merit of our practice be for the benefit of all beings.